Welcome to the Tambellini Group's February Top of Mind podcast. I'm your host, Liz Farrell. This month, we're doing a deep dive into ChatGPT and its implications for teaching and learning in higher education. For those who aren't familiar with ChatGPT, and I doubt there are many, but it is a new cutting-edge AI chatbot created by the San Francisco-based company OpenAI, and it enables natural language conversations. It became publicly available at the end of November 22, and it's different from other AI applications, not only for its sophistication, but because it's both free and widely accessible. In early December, the New York Times heralded it as, quite simply, the best AI chatbot ever released to the general public. And across all social media channels, experts are heralding it as the thing that's going to change how everything is going to be different going forward. So since its launch about 3 months ago, ChatGPT has also garnered a lot of attention and dialogue about its power and perils in the higher education realm. In a recent Atlantic essay, writer Stephen March proclaimed ChatGPT to be the death of the college essay. And yet another Atlantic article the following day by technology critic Ian Bogost ran with the headline that ChatGPT is dumber than you think, as its responses are shallow, they lack depth and insight, and are prone to inaccuracies. So clearly there's a wide spectrum of views and opinion on ChatGPT and a lot to sort out. And that's why we're honored to be joined today by Dr. Lin Lin Lipsmeyer, Chair of the Department of Teaching and Learning at the Simmons School of Education and Human Development at Southern Methodist University. Lin is also the editor-in-chief of the Educational Technology Research and Development Journal, and this is one of the top journals in education research. She's been a professor of learning sciences and learning technologies for over 15 years. And in addition to earning her doctorate of education in instructional media and technology from Columbia University, she also has a certificate from MIT in artificial intelligence and its implications for business strategy. Like many of her fellow leaders in academia, she's been closely following ChatGPT and the applications of other AI and technology tools. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you, Liz, for inviting me. It's my great pleasure to be here today.
Well, we're certainly excited to have you here today. You have so much experience in this area. Can you tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest in this area of research and some of the work that you've done?
Thank you, Liz. Please allow me to start with a quote by Walter Ong from his 1982 book entitled Orality and Literacy. Ong was a cultural historian and literary critic who wrote extensively about the impact of writing on human thoughts and culture. According to Ong, most people are surprised and many distressed to learn that essentially the same objections urged against computers were urged by Plato against writing. Plato has Socrates say that writing is inhuman, pretending to establish outside the mind what in reality can only be in the mind. The same is said about computers. And Plato also says that writing destroys memory. Those who use writing will become forgetful, relying on external resource for what they lack in internal resources. Writing weakens the mind. I thought Ong's comments were relevant because during our evolution from oral culture to literacy, as opposed to now, few people are now against reading, writing, or literacy.
Yeah, it's crazy to hear that. I mean, just the fact that anyone would urge against writing. I love that quote and that you opened with that because it really shows how much we've evolved over time.
Right. And it definitely frames the evolution of language and communications. And we can talk more about that. So particularly, I've been, to answer your question, I've been interested in ChatGPT because I've always been interested in written communications. My dissertation at Teachers College, Columbia University, 15 years ago, focused on asynchronous written dialogue in online learning environments. during my research on online learning, I became fascinated with hyperlinks. That is, when we read and communicate online, we go from one link to the other. Instead of reading linearly, we create our own reading paths and maps when we read online. Then I started doing research on distractions, distributed cognition, media multitasking, and human beings' ability or inability to do several things at the same time, especially with the help of machines and technologies. So one of my first publications was a commentary piece at the National Academy of Sciences when I wondered about the differences between focused cognition and non-focused or breadth-biased cognitive control in media multitasking behaviors. So all this naturally led to my interest in human-computer interactions and in how humans may be able to use technologies and artificial intelligence to enhance our abilities to learn more, to do more, and to do a better job. So in 2018, my colleagues and I organized a 3-day conference bridging human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And we recently published a book with the same title as a follow-up of that conference. And in teaching, I've taught courses such as emerging technologies, technology-based learning environments. My students, most of them are teachers, IT personnel, and corporate trainers, always bring in their new ideas, technologies, challenges, and opportunities of technologies to the class discussions. So I always learn a lot from my students.
I can imagine. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those rooms as all these ideas are so rapidly evolving. Speaking of the past few years, can you set the scene for us? Like, there's been so much that's happened so quickly. We've had this period of rapid acceleration of remote learning and technology and hyper focus on these things during COVID. What have you seen in terms of the general adoption of AI tools in higher ed for both the instructional and teaching side, helping as a tool for you and your peers, and also by students, in both the sanctioned and discouraged ways?
Yeah, Liz, your intuition is absolutely on the mark. So the adoption of AI tools in higher education has been growing in recent years. Some examples include adaptive learning systems, personalized tutoring systems, language learning, plagiarism detection programs. So research-wise, many funding agencies, such as National Science Foundation, have invested in the research and development of AI in education. My students and colleagues and I have also conducted research examining AI tools for attention and learning. So, you mentioned about the rapid changes in the past years in terms of COVID. We know COVID has been a catalyst for the increased use of technologies such as ChatGPT and other AI-based tools in remote learning. So the sudden shift to remote learning has really highlighted the needs for innovative ways for teaching and learning. And technologies have been used to create content, facilitate communication and collaboration, such as Zoom, using the Zoom, and support tutoring and assessment.
So what do you think? I mean, there's been so much debate. The one thing we all seem to know for sure is that COVID has been a catalyst for these discussions about a lot of the common applications that you've just mentioned in terms of the plagiarism detection, other AI tools. So can you talk about what you see as some of the negative or positive impacts of that hyper focus, we might even be able to say, over the past couple of years on these things?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like you mentioned, the proctoring plagiarism detection software have been used quite a lot in the past year also in the remote learning environment. So there are, a lot of adaptive, personalized learning systems. And of course, in the process, there have been concerns about privacy, security, accessibility issues, especially for people who have disabilities, and also the effectiveness of such technologies like plagiarism detection technologies in preventing cheating. So there definitely have been, new uses as well as concerns of the technology uses.
Yeah, and I know you had mentioned as a negative impact, there's been some thought that there's been learning loss, this questioning of, are students really learning or are they cheating? But I'm wondering, in terms of the positive, that you'd mentioned that there's more creative and integrated work than memory-based work. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Right. Because of the concerns of students cheating and the concerns of really assessing students' authentic learning. So on the positive side, teachers have been more creative in giving assignments for the students. And these are the things that, as educators, we want, right? We want to facilitate more creative learning processes. So to a degree, the remote learning has forced a lot of teachers, educators to think about other ways of assessing students. And so the assignments, there are more other creative assignments, such as asking students to create things and then talk about their products. Or ways of, a lot of hands-on, more creative assignments than just asking students to almost, remember something and, recite back to the teachers.
Less of that didactic approach and more of that engagement, which
right.
Maybe on the surface, people would think, oh, well, that's just going to make it easier for them to not do the work. And it's been fascinating, as you point out, to see that there actually have been ways to use these tools that are more engaging. And what that brings us to is, against that backdrop, we see ChatGPT comes out, the internet explodes over it. Can you describe your initial response? I know this wasn't something that just came out of nowhere for you. You knew it was out there and had used it before then, but I'd like to hear from you as someone who is so engaged in this field and a leader in it. Like, what did you see as that cross section of responses? Can you summarize for our listeners the range of reactions and themes and topics they fell under?
Right. Oh, I would say my initial response was that I was impressed.
Okay.
And I would say that there have been mixed responses and emotions about ChatGPT. People have been, excited or indifferent, hesitant, concerned. Personally, I put ChatGPT in a group of disruptive technologies, such as things like the typewriter, calculator, computer, internet, Google, iPhone, and YouTube. So there are, as we know, looking back at all these technologies, we love them, right? They have been really helping us do things that we would not otherwise be able to do. But when they came about, if we remember, they all had this yin and yang kind of reactions, right? There were always fears when new technologies came about. Now, of course, rightfully, there are a lot of concerns. For example, with ChatGPT, the cheating, because it writes so well, and inaccurate and inaccurate information. And to respond to that, teachers need to think about their teaching methods and ethics, bias, and so forth. We can talk more about that. So it's interesting, during November and December last year, when ChatGPT came about, during that time, my colleagues and I organized a series of speaker events focusing on artificial intelligence for teaching and learning. It was supported by SMU Simmons School of Education and Human Development. We invited Dr. George Simmons of University of South Australia and University of Texas in Arlington, Dr. Sidney DeMello of University of Colorado, Boulder, Dr. Neil Dowell, University of California, Irvine, Dr. Christina Gardner-McCune of University of Florida, and Dr. Sue Kunair, Vice Provost for Research and Chief Innovative Officer at SMU, to be speakers and panelists. The speakers discussed the literacy and ethical implications of AI for teaching and learning. We talked about global AI initiatives, K-12 AI initiatives. So when ChatGPT came out at the time, on late November, a colleague asked ChatGPT, who is George Simmons, our lead speaker and panelist. We received a very well-written bio of Dr. Simmons, better than the one I wrote, honestly, to introduce him to our audience. I felt a bit humiliated, but we were all quite impressed by the ChatGPT's bio for George Simmons.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that, because you started by saying, I was very impressed. That was your initial reaction with GTP. And then you said, well, I felt foolish. And you talked a bit about, can you talk about some of those mixed emotions that people have? I know you had mentioned, like, students are going to be released in a world that has this tool and we need to teach them how to use it, and we're not prepared to do that. Can you explain some of those other sort of paradoxes that people are feeling about this in this early times of adoption?
Right. Yeah. So again, it goes back to the what you just said, the mixed emotions and yin and yang. One of the scholars that influenced my own thinking quite a lot is Marshall McLuhan. And his work, he talks about media and technologies being extensions and amputations of human bodies. Mm-hmm. With artificial intelligence, especially here, ChatGPT, we are enabled to produce better essays, writings with less effort or no effort. Right. While at the same time, we will need to think about our traditional literacy skills, the ability to read and write as being taught. So we need to constantly examine the truths and sources behind the writings. At least for the moment, ChatGPT does not give us citations or references. It is based on big data set. Still, we don't know where they're from. So there's definitely, the concern for bias, misinformation, disinformation.
Yes, and there's that parallel that you had mentioned when you were talking about disruptive tools of the calculator. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that in terms of, another thing you had said, we have to teach people how to use these tools. Like, I remember, I think when I was in high school and in AP calculus, that was the first time that they had these like graphing calculators. And there was a lot of the teachers, yes, you're able to use them in the exams, but it was a different way of learning about, arcs and sines and cosines and all of that. And as someone being one of the first to use it, I thought, yes, this is going to make this so much easier for me. And then you realize it really doesn't, because you have to understand the concepts, the theories, and how to apply them. It is, at the end of the day, just a tool. So there is, some talk of, or we know some places have maybe initially banned it, and we know this is a moving target every day. But do you think that a ban is a probable or likely or even well-advised approach to this? I've seen some debates about that. I'd be curious to hear if you think writ large that that's something that can or will happen.
Right. Well, personally, I don't think it is feasible or a good idea to ban ChatGPT or other AI technologies along the way. I mentioned Walter Ong's work arguments at the beginning of our conversation. So history, shows that banning something, especially technologies, it doesn't really work in the long run. And it may not be fair actually for everyone, because some people will always have access while other people are being banned or being deprived of using the technologies. And so instead of banning it, it may be a good idea to incorporate, in this case, ChatGPT, maybe flipped learning, having students explore and provide their critical thinking about the writings that are, produced by ChatGPT. And teachers can use the ChatGPT also to really help students learn about reading and writing, examining the writing, help students develop critical thinking skills or creativity. So and another part is like what you just said earlier. It's not just using the tool is itself actually is a skill, right? It's not like it just, even calculator, you think, oh, I gave you a calculator, you just know how to use it. That's not necessarily true, right? All the technologies, sometimes, we say a technology is good or bad, especially for an educational setting. And a lot of times it is not about a technology being bad or good. A lot of times it is how we use it, how we best use it, how we use the technology critically to really maximize the benefits and minimize the risks or drawbacks.
And especially with something that's evolving right now, there seems to be at least some consensus that, as you're saying, like, we've got to figure out how to use it. We're not just going to judge it outright. But I imagine that's where a lot of the apprehension comes from with that excitement, because we're so early in understanding the potentials and the drawbacks of this. It's really hard to do anything but continue experimenting with it, continue talking about it, and continuing to evaluate how it's working in various applications.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Yeah.
So why do you think that ChatGPT is so different and has garnered so much attention? I mean, we've talked about how great it is, but can we break that down a bit? Like, what are some of the most significant differences you see between ChatGPT and some of its predecessors?
Yes, Liz, this is an important question. There are a few significant differences. For example, ChatGPT has the ability to generate human-like responses to a wide range of prompts and respond in a natural way.
Okay, so natural, but I see that phrase a lot, like human-like responses, natural language. Can you break that down for us in layman's terms?
Right. So, when you do a Google search, you get hundreds of all these links, right? You go click on those links. But ChatGPT, when you type a keyword or a question, it gives you a paragraph, right? It's almost like just like now, when you ask me a question, I don't just give you a list of links. I try to answer you in a paragraph, right? Mm-hmm. Tell a story. So that's what ChatGPT does. It gives you a paragraph, and the paragraph is generated based on large set of conversational text. And then you can ask further, and then it will fine-tune itself. That's another thing that's really, it's done very well by ChatGPT, better than other chats out there. It fine-tunes itself. You can continue to ask the question, and then it will refine itself and give you a different answer. And hopefully that answer is better, closer to what you're asking. So it has the ability, one is sort of really have a conversation. Two, the conversation is based on large data set, and it fine-tunes itself, sort of trying to be real. Right. And number three is it's free. It's open source. It's availability of trained models. So the significance, the implications, I think what you're trying to get for higher education. For example, it can help summarize scientific papers. And we know how hard that takes a lot of time to do.
The abstract up front is the hardest thing to write.
Right. The meta-analysis, synthesis of scientific papers. And that's amazing. It can, it helps essay writing, which is the biggest concern now. It writes better than me. I even have a doctoral degree. It does language translation. I use Google Translate all the time when I go between the languages. And actually, I have more confidence in ChatGPT, in its ability to translate. And that means, it just opens a whole new world of people being able to communicate with each other without the language barriers. And then the question answer, automatic question answer. So it's sort of you can provide virtual tutors. And actually, this morning I was just thinking, nowadays we talk about counseling therapy all the time, psychological impacts of COVID. This, if done well, it's more advanced. It can almost be a therapist for someone, right?
Right.
So I can see a lot of potentials. I think that's why it's sort of getting a lot of attention. It's just a better version of a lot of things that are already here.
You've mentioned too, you said, unlike some other recent high-profile advances in AI, as of this was December 2022, there's no sign of an official peer-reviewed technical paper about ChatGPT yet. So can you tell us why? Is it just because it's so early on, or do you know of any that are in the works, and what do you think they may focus on?
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT just came out really publicly last November. And as you know, peer-reviewed journal articles take almost a year to come out. So from that sense, of course, it's there's nothing. I won't be surprised. Things will come out about ChatGPT soon. Now the journals are also very trying to catch up quickly. There have been a lot of publications on related technologies like chats. Even myself, my students and I, we did a study, not for a different purpose. We had AI chats trying to serving as like buddies to try to distract students when the students are in the lectures. And we want to see to what extent the distraction by the AI chat affects the students' learning of the lectures. To extent the students are able to pay attention to the lectures, to extent they are able to remember what they watched in the lectures. And we looked at the students' ability to be able to multitask. So we did that study in 2013. So there have been a lot of studies related, but ChatGPT specifically, I'm sure there are going to be peer-reviewed journal articles coming out the next few months.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see because of the unique differentiators that you've described, how much of that research into the implications, the impacts, the other things that you mentioned looking at that in that 2013 paper will have similar findings. Like, are we going to follow this similar trajectory where there's this, oh, we don't know what this is going to do at first, but we think these things might be good and be bad, and then we have this refined use for it. Especially, this is a moving target. We know things like GPT-4 is coming out later on and everything. So it's going to be fascinating to see. And again, with the recognition that we're very early in this whole journey, very exciting journey nonetheless. And we don't have any of that peer-reviewed research. I'm curious if you can break down for us some of those differences and how they are specifically different for higher ed. I know we've talked a little bit about plagiarism. I mean, can you speak to how this might be different here and some of these other things that you've mentioned?
Right. I think it's just going to continue to evolve. Actually, I was thinking, several colleagues and we just had another paper just out a few weeks ago on a program called Packback. It's AI-enabled program that would help students ask better questions in discussion forums, also would allow the instructors to grade students more easily based on the AI prompts, whether the students only said, I agree or disagree, to extend how the depths of the students' questions, responses, as well as the citations and references the students used to generate their discussion postings. So I think, with all the excitement of ChatGPT, other programs out there are going to also see how they can improve, their products. On the other side, also, of course, the risks and the drawbacks of ChatGPT. The plagiarism is one aspect. Hopefully that will get us all think more about other ways of teaching, more creative ways, or teaching students new skills that will really be important to be able to work along ChatGPT and other AI technologies. And another, big concern, of course, is the bias, because ChatGPT, the content is generated based on whatever is out there. And as we all know, there's a lot of bias, misinformation, disinformation that are there on the internet, and ChatGPT will just pull them all together. So there are efforts that are put in to try to counter the biases, misinformation. Still, it's evolving. People are continuously putting in data. So I don't think we can completely get rid of them. It takes us all the people, all the users, to be vigilant, to constantly examine the content constantly really look at how this technology is evolving.
Yes, for sure. I mean, one of the things that you had mentioned as well was this need for digital literacy, right? We've been hearing about that for years, but this is, in my estimation, it seems to make the need for that, to teach that in an even more sophisticated manner.
I agree. I completely agree.
On that note, I read a recent article in Times Higher Education, and it quoted this associate professor at Wharton who studies innovation. His name's Ethan Mollick, and he said, we have to both panic about how ChatGPT is changing everything, but also think about how we can use it. And I think that that echoes with a lot of what you've said here. Can you talk about some of those ethical considerations for the dilemmas in the decision-making process?
Right. So the dilemma, I guess I would agree to this with this statement, except that I don't think we need to panic yet.
Okay, sure.
I think it's important to get ahead of the ethical design requirements. And it's important to pay attention to both the benefits and risks and use them responsibly. I think it's important to really consider the negative implications of the models. For example, the ability to generate human-like text can lead to the spread of misinformation or the manipulation of the public opinion. And we are all as humans, we like stories, right? We like we need the context. So I think those are all very important, like you mentioned previously.
Yeah, and with the tool evolving so much, it seems like banning it, as you've said, it's not really an option. It's going to be very hard to monitor that, because you can do so many permutations of different prompts when you ask a question and get different responses.
Right. Yeah, so it is, there are all these different things, I think, as educators, as policymakers, parents, teachers, students, IT folks. I think all the stakeholders should be involved in this process, really just to constantly look at the potential biases, look into the training and resources, as you mentioned earlier, and the guidelines. We need to update the guidelines, best practices, and that's going to be continuous because it just changes so fast. And really, I think collaboration is important, collaboration between different stakeholders, because we all know our little thing. Without collaboration, we really don't know the big picture. So collaborating between the stakeholders is very important.
And you mentioned this need for collaboration. Everyone has a responsibility in this. But what do you see specifically for those in the teaching and learning realm for being their responsibility? Is it to be the convener? Or do you find that, not only within your own institution, but beyond that, are others, faculty who aren't as well versed in teaching and learning, pedagogy and everything else, like, are they turning to you all for guidance on these things? And do you feel that that's a specific role that you all should serve? Like, how do you go about being responsible, if at all, for shaping policies as part of a larger institution or ecosystem of educators and administrators at universities, not even in the US, but across the world?
Right. Yeah. In fact, SMU just in the last few weeks facilitated by the SMU, the provost office, a group of faculty and staff members across the campus have come together to discuss ways to open a campus-wide discussion about ChatGPT and generative AI. So the folks include course instructors, the Center of Teaching Excellence, libraries, different institutes, the Office of Information Technology, and of course, the Simmons School of Education and Human Development. So the faculty and staff have been invited to join conversations in classroom instructions, pedagogies, research innovations, ethical, legal, policy implications. So this is sort of on the campus where I am now. Mm-hmm. I assume many other higher education institutions are doing something similar. But that's only, that's just a small part of, what's going on a global level. Like what you said, I think the parents, the students, teachers, all the people, companies, the designers, really all need to be thinking about the implications of artificial intelligence. I think a lot of people are, fortunately. I think compared to other technologies before, AI actually is one of the I guess areas that from the very start, people were looking at the ethical implications of the technologies, which is really amazing.
Yes, that's a good part of it too, because even though this is such a new and different tool, there is a bit of a blueprint there for things we have to consider and who can and should be involved in those conversations. So I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're right, this is not totally new in that sense, and that these are conversations that have been happening around similar issues related to other tools and applications for a long time. Right. So how do you see, we've talked about, again, moving target, rapidly evolving. How do you see ChatGPT and other tools changing in the coming year and going forward? And I know that you had a response from ChatGPT, according to ChatGPT, on the future of that. So I thought we'd start with that, and then you can expound on that to show our listeners the difference between the two.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. So of course, every time when you ask the question to ChatGPT, what's the future of ChatGPT, it gives you, a little bit of different answer. So I will read the two responses. One response was one I put in a few days ago. Another response is one of the responses that I got from today, just a few minutes ago. Wow. So the one from a few days ago, according to ChatGPT, the future of ChatGPT and other large language models like it will likely involve continued advancements in natural language processing and machine learning. This could lead to improvements in the model's ability to understand and respond to a wide range of inputs, as well as increased flexibility and customization of specific use cases. Additionally, there may be increased use of these models in various industries and applications, such as customer service, language translation, and content generation. However, it is also important to consider ethical and societal implications of such technology. So that was a few days ago. And before we started our conversation, I thought I would typing again just to see what the ChatGPT says now. So this is one of the responses. The future of ChatGPT is uncertain as it depends on the advancements in artificial intelligence, the development of similar AI models, and the demand for such technology. However, OpenAI plans to continue improving and updating the model to provide better and more efficient AI-powered conversation. So as you can see, there are similarities, but there are differences in the two responses.
And do you think that both of those are correct?
They have a little bit of different emphasis, right? The second one mentioned OpenAI, the company. The first one didn't. So the second one also, I guess, mentioned about a bit more uncertainty and a focus on AI-powered conversation, while the first one, I think, broader, had almost like a bigger vision to a degree. So it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know to what extent it gave me the second answer. This. Based on what I asked previously.
Right.
So it will be interesting to continue to check. Yeah, so I think it's interesting to note that this technology is continuously evolving. And, as ChatGPT mentioned, there are changes like on the training on larger, more diverse data sets. I think other things like improved multi-modal or multimedia capabilities. There are a lot of things that I think ChatGPT can do to improve, or the designers can help, or we together can help improve.
You mentioned too, I think, the images, texts, and sounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are so used to Alexa, Echo, Siri, right? And they're not that different from ChatGPT, right? Because when you ask questions, they gave you some answers. They are not to extent as ChatGPT. So I think, I won't be surprised. A lot of these different technologies are going to converge, and they are going to learn from each other or borrow from each other. And recently we've been all talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, metaverse. So things are going to converge and also sort of I guess diverge and evolve. So it'll be exciting to see what's going to happen next.
It certainly will be. I guess in closing, I'm wondering, do you have any resources or people that you would recommend that our listeners check out to learn more about this, that you find credible and helpful?
Yeah, the National Science Foundation, for example, because that's what I pay attention to, has invested a lot in AI technologies. For example, there are several big AI institutes, and there are Digital Promise, which is one of the nonprofit organizations out there that focus on technologies in K-12, in educational areas. On the global level, George Simmons started this Grill association. So there are a lot of good efforts that are out there. So personally, I'm very excited again about the ChatGPT, and I think we need to engage all the stakeholders, including students, teachers, and a lot of times, actually, we can learn a lot from our children. Often our children approach these destructive technologies with a very healthy sense of awe and curious sense of play. Mm-hmm. And in that process, they find limitations and frustrations. So I think as adults, a lot of times, rather than trying just to say no to our children, maybe we can partner with our children and, of course, partner with the new technologies. AI teaming is something that I think in a lot of people's mind. And I think finally, we need to be encouraging critical thinking. I think critical thinking is more important than ever. So with critical thinking, we can hopefully continuously distinguish the authentic information from misinformation, disinformation, improve the technologies around us, and so that we can do better with the help of technologies.
Well, that's a very optimistic note to end on, and we're going to be very excited looking in this space going forward. Lin, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with us. I've learned so much from our conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Thank you very much for having me.
That concludes this month's podcast of Tambellini's Top of Mind. You can check out the rest of our resources on our blog at thetambollinigroup.com.